Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first Democracy and General Purposes Committee of 2026. My name's Clive English, I'm the chairman of this committee, and I hope that we will handle matters with some dispatch this evening. First of all, there are, as far as I know, no fire drills fixed for this evening, so if the alarm goes off, we will assume it's a genuine emergency. Democratic Services officers will seek to establish what's going on and establish a safe route out of the building, which we will duly try and follow if that occurs, instead of trying to jump across Bank Street as some of the former occupants of the cell above us did unsuccessfully many years ago. May I ask that anyone who has mobile phones with them this evening, please put them on silent mode. And if you are wanting to speak, please indicate and use your microphone and turn them off after you've finished speaking. Right, on with the agenda. First of all, are there any apologies for absence? Councillor.
Apologies from Councillor Reardon.
Thank you. Any others? No. In that case, notification of substitute members. Councillor Russell, I assume you're substituting.
Councillor Russell for Councillor Reardon, Chair.
Nice to see you and Happy New Year. Are there any urgent items? Thank you. Notification of visiting members, unless there are any online. We don't have any, so good. Disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures? Oh, good. Disclosures of lobbying. None. Good. To consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. We do have a exempt appendix, which we may be, as a result, going into part 2 to discuss the appointments for the remuneration independent member from the remuneration panel. And yes, that's what I said. And do I have agreement that we will go into part 2 for the interviews for that appointment? Thank you very much. Minutes of the meeting of the 30th of October, which was a long time ago. So if anyone can remember, are these an accurate record? I think they are, but it's a long time ago. Councillor Thompson? In that case, I will in due course sign them. Sorry? Yeah, thank you. Right. Presentation of petitions, if any, not this meeting, although I'm told we might have one at the next. You're going to have to wait a bit on your one, Gary. Questions from members for the chair. Sorry, questions from members of the public. Are there any? No. Just goes to show what happens when you don't have a parish community governance review on the agenda. The questions just drop off the end. Right, questions from members to the chairman, if any. I don't think we got any. That brings us to the committee work programme on page 4. Any questions or comments? Ms Woodhouse, anything you want to add? I'm sure we can find more to add to it, should members wish to do so. There's always room for more. So, is that rather short work programme agreed? As it's right. We now come to the independent remuneration panel appointment of independent person, which is definitely the highlight of this evening's meeting. Did you want to introduce this report in part 1 or did Billy want before we go into part 2?
Thank you, Chair. This is a report on the Independent Remuneration Panel, who are required to meet every 4 years to review the Members' Allowances Scheme and then prepare a report for Council to make any recommendations to the scheme. The panel last done a full review in 2022, and when there's a new unitary authority as a result of the LGR, they will be required to create a new remuneration panel to decide the new members' allowances scheme for that new unitary authority. Therefore, we're going to be recommending to appoint an independent panel to undertake a review of the members' allowances scheme, and we have received 2 applications for the committee to consider. The applications are at the back of the agenda on the yellow pages, and the interviews will be conducted in tonight as a part 2 confidential session, as you've already said, with the process being led by yourself.
I mean, hypothetically, if a new town council were set up, which would have potentially a remuneration scheme, would they be? They'd be looking at that as well, would they? Yes, just checking. As a hypothetical, obviously. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. As with other independent these people, what they can do is bring forward recommendations. It's not a statutory thing whereby they actually make the decisions. It's not a decision-making thing. It's something which would be brought back. So in the scenario of a unitary, it would be for the unitary would look at their recommendations, and that might be. It would obviously be for the unitary to agree their own independent remuneration panel, given there is a KCC one that would be involved on that as well. I understand the comment about the town council, but it is purely a recommendation thing. Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. So the idea of this panel is purely looking at Maidstone Borough Council. So if LGR comes through, the processes will come through by the shadow authority. So it won't be you're right. We can't forward look, and you are correct. It would be recommendation.
I didn't imply anything about the unitary, but the town council, yes, you're right. I did state that because it is obviously hasn't been agreed. It may not be agreed, but it is a hypothetical which would fall within the span of term of office. Right, so what I'm now going to do is go into part 2, and we will, as a committee, hear from each candidate in turn. We're going with alphabetical order, which is the same order as on the agenda papers. So if you're clear on that one, and I will ask the other person to Thank you very much, members and members of the public. I shall bring the committee back to order. After a long discussion, which was fraught because we had two very good candidates, and frankly, either could have been appointed to this role and quite acceptable too, which is a nice problem to have. But after a long discussion, and it was a long discussion, members of this committee have decided to appoint Mr. Wall for the term of office. We do thank Mr. Hayday for coming along and making a very interesting discussion take place. We hope that should any further opportunities to be co-opted to committees of this council come up, that you will keep us in mind. You may stay or go as you prefer. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you very much, both of you. We do appreciate it.
Yeah. Just stay.
We now move to the recommendations on the paper, which we need to formally agree, which is, I will find the right page in a moment. Page 6. Page 6. See the recommendations set out. Do I have someone to propose the recommendation that we fill the vacancy on the independent remuneration panel and the preferred candidate, Mr. Wall, be appointed for the independent remuneration panel and to carry out the duties of and the review of the members' allowances by the 1st of April 2026. Thank you. Now is it agreed? Thank you. Have to have the second or first. I know it's a pernickety point, but thank you very much. We now move on to what everyone always finds a highlight of these things, and that's the outside bodies report. So, would you like to introduce it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Again, this is just a sort of standard report to consider the outside bodies appointments. Just note that Appendix 1 contains the nominations received for the vacant outside bodies that we have, and Appendix 2 contains the one outside body that we don't have a nomination for currently, which is the Maidstone Cycling Campaign Forum. We just ask that the committee agree the nominations shown in Appendix 1, and note that one outside body has been removed from the outside bodies list, which is in the recommendation too.
So, we technically had to do these separately, I suppose. We come to Hale Park Nature Reserve first. We have a nomination from Councillor Simon Wales, who I believe is the only eligible candidate. So I hope would like to propose him. Is that seconded? We can discuss it at length if you like, but the alternative is not making an appointment because it's limited to ward members for Linton and Lewes and Tovel. So, and as so, I'd like to propose Councillor Wales. Is that second? Thank you, Councillor Cook. All those in favour? That's agreed. Thank you. One Maidstone bid. So we have a nomination. Councillor Conyard. Yes, he's already served on this in the past. All those in favour? Yes. Thank you. That's agreed. Yes. Spoilt for choice. We have 3 different seconders, but just choose whichever one you like. Thank you very much. And then we come to the Cycling Campaign Forum. This body is, as far as I can tell, been fairly inactive of late. So, and they have not put forward a name for a nominee. Should it revive at some point in the future, we can always revisit this decision. But at the moment, as they've been asked numerous occasions and have not put forward a nominee, our protocol is to, at least for the moment, remove the appointment. Councillor Gooch.
Chairman, whether we've written to them, we have written to them quite recently, have we, to say, really? Okay, thank you very much.
I've also been reminded, Paul Kahapa, who was the leading light and has been reminded on a number of occasions, both about this and about the Medway Valley line. We have had two different answers. He responded with the about the Medway Valley line, and a nomination, Councillor Kimmy Millen, was made, and which was widely accepted, and we work very closely with said organisation, and Kimmy's appointment has been welcomed by them. I wear my other hat there as chairman of the Kent Downs line, part of the Community Rail Partnership. So Paul came back to us about that. He did not come back to us about the Cycle Campaign Forum, so we have drawn and I also asked Duncan Edwards, who has been involved in this in the past, and basically, as far as I can see, most of the work they were doing has been overtaken by Maidstone Can. Climate Action Network, including the Repair Cafe and things like that. Yeah, so although the title wouldn't necessarily make you think of Cycle Campaign Action, a lot of the work that was being done has been taken on by other organisations, so it's not as if it's not happening. So, but as I said, should the Cycle Campaign Forum become a viable and active organisation again, we can always reconsider the decision and get re-involved should a request come forward. So, but for the moment, I'm proposing that we remove this from the list of outside bodies. That agreed? Thank you. Subject to review in the future. That brings us on to the Youth Scrutiny Board report, which is an exciting piece of work. And I mean that. So we've got a bit of a youth theme tonight, one way or the other. How are you doing this, or is Billy? Are you active?
Thank you, Chair. So this report is following up from the committee's decision to proceed with a Youth Advisory Board model in March 2025, and it's put before you today to put forward a Youth Scrutiny Board. Since March 2025, we've contacted the schools around Maidstone. We've had 11 schools that have shown an interest in taking part in this sort of board. The two main options that are available and outlined in the report is option one, and this is the officer's recommended approach, which is to create a Youth Scrutiny Board. The idea is for it to act similarly to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee and work on its own programme to review issues that affect the young people of Maidstone. This differs in option two, which is a Youth Advisory Board, and one that can be guided by the Cabinet and what topics they would like the Youth Advisory Board to discuss. This approach, we feel, does not give the young people of Maidstone the best opportunity to engage and provide their own views on policy development that matters to the young people of Maidstone. The Youth Scrutiny Board will be able to not only look on topics that interest them, but feed into the forward plan work and work with the Council's Overview and Scrutiny Committee. To further facilitate the Overview and Scrutiny aspect of the Youth Scrutiny Board, the Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is happy to work with the Board and work with the Chairman of the Youth Scrutiny Board. We've provided an example of type of terms of reference for the Youth Scrutiny Board at Appendix 1 of the report, and we just ask that the committee can provide us some guidance as to which preferred option they would like to take.
Thank you very much, Billy. Very good. Speaking for myself, I don't think a committee that is subject to, shall we say, tutelage from the Cabinet would send the right message, and certainly wouldn't be very welcoming. They would almost be saying, yeah, we're going to let you do some work, but we don't really trust you to do it yourselves, so we're going to tell you what to do. I think that's very patronising, very condescending, and gets us off on the wrong foot. I just want to sort of hand the question over to the Chairman of Overview and Scrutiny to a certain extent, because obviously option one I mean, it's not dependent on your support, but it would be very much helped by a positive reaction from your good self, Councillor Russell. So I'm handing it over to you to see what you say on that.
Councillor Russell on the spot. Yeah, no, officers did contact me about this, and very happy to help in any way that I can. Obviously, having been chair of Overview and Scrutiny now, this is my second year. We've done a variety of short projects, longer projects, different things that we've been interested in, but I am aware that the things that we're interested in as elected members and things that are topical or come forward on the forward plan might be completely different to things that the Youth Scrutiny Board would be interested in. So yeah, I'm happy to help them get it going, or, you know, make guest appearances, and presumably they would do likewise, make guest appearances at Overview and Scrutiny and Cabinet. So yeah, happy with that option.
Thank you. I think it is important that if we go with that option, I think it's a better option that the overall head of Overview and Scrutiny, political head, is sympathetic and supportive. So I did need to ask you that. Any additional? Councillor Cook and then Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Chairman. I have some questions, please. Just to start with, I think this is actually incredibly important. And what's important about this is making sure that we as Maidstone Borough Council and any council that supersedes us is actively listening to the voice of our young people. Not just listening to the voice of young people, but acting upon what they are hearing. That doesn't mean that we do as we're told, in exactly the same way that when I was a parent bringing up my children, they never did what they were told either. But I do think for those people that knew the lady, Anne Allen, who was a county councillor friend of mine, she always said that the voice of the child should be paramount. The question I wanted to ask, obviously the 11 schools is important, because are we talking about primary schools, secondary schools, which schools, and are we then saying that there needs to be a different balance in terms of the age ranges in the way that other similar type of youth advisory groups are set up? I'm quite happy. I don't like the idea of a youth scrutiny. I think the can we think about the title, please, Chairman? But I think the principle of how it operates with the terms of reference is absolutely fine, and I'm very supportive of that. I'm also incredibly supportive of the idea of having a senior member actively working with the youth group, and I think the chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny is an excellent choice on that, and I support that as well. But I just think that in terms of the structure and getting balance across the different age ranges is important, and obviously then allowing the schools to do that. But I think we need to look at that this evening before we move forward. Is that possible, please?
Have given it at least some thought.
Yeah, so we've approached mainly secondary schools, and those secondary schools have given us an idea of different ranged age groups. They haven't told us specific age groups that are interested, just... I've got a list. So like the Invicta Grammar School, Maidstone Grammar, the Lenham School, Valley Park. There's one school called New Line Learning, Woodward Academies, Woodard. Mapleston Noakes, the School of Science and Technology, Maidstone. No, they haven't. Well, they haven't responded to us.
It's probably worth chasing them up because they've been a very engaged school in the past.
We haven't specifically asked these schools for a specific year group because we wasn't entirely sure what the members wanted as, if they wanted to narrow it down to a year group, if they want to have it as open to different year groups that the schools.
Through you, Chairman, please. There's some interesting challenges with that, because obviously certain year groups are very focused on exams. Then you get into the later years and they start thinking about university admissions, and then they shoot off to university, and that might be in the middle of something that you're doing here. I do think that there needs to be a balance in terms of year. I mean, when you go into, it's year 7 when you go into secondary school. So they start with 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and maybe 13 is in my language the old sixth forms and what have you. But then I still work on the basis of half terms and three main terms. So I'd like to see some balance. So so if the schools, I don't know. I'm looking at the officers through you, Chairman, to get some guidance here. But I just think it's actually important that we build this into the group.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's a valid point. The discussions we've had with schools, we've been quite flexible, so we haven't stipulated it must be year 10 or year 12 or year 9. And the indication we've had is that it'll probably cover different, each school's likely to probably put forward different age groups, so you'll probably have a bit of a range across the 11 places, which I think could be better, because then there's that opportunity for a bit of mentoring as well with some of the older and younger students. So yeah, so I think we don't want to be too restrictive because we want to encourage them. I imagine the other thing that's in there is we've offered to assist with elections and kind of helping them do that. So it's a whole process, not just come and be on the board, but we kind of get the knowledge about elections out there as well and promote that engagement and participation. So we're trying not to shut it down. I think you're right, we need to be flexible and encourage lots of different ages. And I imagine some of them will be in place for a year and then there'll be a new appointment, because that's just how I think it'll work in school with exams and everything else people have going on. Does that make sense?
Maybe we could just make a slight amendment to say that we would wish to recognise and encourage some diversity in the age range, also some diversity in boys versus girls. And I'd also like to suggest, Chairman, that we don't limit it to 11, because if more children start to come forward and want to be involved, then I think we should be encouraging them. Well, we've got to get the children involved to start with. There isn't a board yet.
I think those are useful principles to start with, to an extent where we will be dependent on how many volunteers we actually get coming forward. And I would say that if we get a reasonable take-up, there might be some conversations to be had to encourage, what the people who, shall we say, most meet the criteria for having a flourishing wide range of views and diversity in the positive sense of the word, in the way that it can contribute rather than being about quotas and things. So I think we've made a note of all of those, and that they will be included as a background note for the decision, provided we make a decision. Councillor Thompson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Russell, I do apologise.
I was just going to say, I mean, when we do our topics with overview and scrutiny, we don't get the same people to every work thing that we do, depending on whether we hold daytime working groups or we do it as an evening committee. It's the invitation's open to all, and then we get who we get for that. So I wouldn't want to close it down, because at the moment, don't make it too prescriptive, make it exciting and try and get the schools involved. I'm sure these things will take shape when you've got the 11 people, you've got the chair. They naturally evolve, don't they? And the officers will guide. So I think just go for it. So I'm proposing option 1.
Thank you. I second that. Councillor Thompson, before we move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair and members. It was asserted earlier in the meeting that a different item on this paper was the most exciting business of the evening, and I'd just like to say that I think we've now arrived at it. My only regret is that this hasn't happened already. It's wonderful that we're doing it now. It's instructive that it hasn't happened before. A hypothesis was put forward earlier about the potential relationship between the Cabinet in option 2 and the young people concerned. Views may vary, I would like to say. I think that option 2 could work very well. I simply want to say that option 1 offers even more freedoms and even more opportunity and even more scope for creativity, both amongst the young people in the first place and indeed in the relationships with the councillors. We can do all of the things that it says in option 2 while voting for option 1. We can have cake and we can eat it, if I may say. The point about active listening is important. I support Councillor Cook in that regard. I would caution all of us against ageism amongst school students, as I would sure we would all caution one another an ageism amongst those who have already reached the age of majority, or indeed of what gender they might be. And if we are asking for one elected person from each school, I struggle to see how it is that we would manage that particular requirement. You do have to choose one in the model that we're being presented with. So I'm not sure that that particular concern does get addressed in this way. We're going to have to think of other ways of dealing with that problem. On the subject of Cabinet involvement, Mr. Chairman, education is in the Healthy Stronger Communities portfolio. I am not going to brashly interject and say that I think that there should be some Cabinet responsibility formally recognised in this. I'm delighted that the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny is going to be leading councillors' involvement in this, and would simply like to say that please would she call on the education portfolio holder whenever and for whatever reason, and I very much hope that I will be able to assist. We need to, as Angela Woodhouse knows very well, I'm extremely enthusiastic for all opportunities to increase the liaison and information exchange between schools and Maidstone Borough Council. There's lots of things that we wish that schools knew more about, and this will provide another conduit of communication which I would like to see contributed to. And on the last thing that I had written down, Billy, you got to, you gave us 3, 6, 7, 8 of the 11. Could I ask you what the last 3 schools were on your list? You got as far as SST, and then we interrupted you. If you were able to tell us who they are. Councillor Cook's question about whether any of them are primary schools I thought was pertinent. It would be nice to know if we got any. They are. And I would like to know whether or not we have tried as hard as we might to contact primary schools, because I would like to underline that some 10-year-olds are extremely capable.
Well, we have,
or even younger than that. Come to that.
We are complicating this tremendously, Councillor Thompson, and I'm bringing this discussion to an end.
Well, it's Maidstone Grammar's twice, but it's because you've got the sixth form side of the school, and then you've got the Key Stage 3. So the Key Stage 3, I'm guessing, is, I'm not entirely sure where that year starts now. But well,
if that's in Victor, yes, then it's the other way around.
and did I say Oakwood Park? Did I say Oakwood Park? Valley Park. Did I say Valley Park? I'm trying to switch which one I don't do. I can circulate the list.
Circulate the list. Please, just circulate the list.
Come on.
We are making this too complicated. We're trying to design the final outcome. We're trying to design the final outcome when what we actually need is a reasonably flexible and open approach, especially given that with scrutiny, most of the work is done in working groups which tend to have a flexible-ish membership anyway, as Councillor Russell very ably pointed out. So I'm going to, unless your comment was very, very important, I'm going to move to the vote. No, go on, Councillor Wilkinson, as you've not said anything yet.
So I just wonder if we can put in a clause that sort of says the board's outputs and membership model and elections could be handed over to any successor authority, whether there's a way of facilitating that or maybe it's outside the scope of this exercise, and could Democratic Services produce some sort of, I don't know, handover pack for successor authorities, possibly?
We can try and influence the unitary authority, when it's the shadow authority, to move in that direction. We can't mandate them, but the point is well made that we should seek to influence them to take this arrangement forward. But thank you, that's a very worthy addition. Having added that, those in favour of option 1? I think that's everyone. Thank you very much, and thank you for your discussion this evening, members. Yes, how could I forget? How could I forget? Councillor Pearl, and he is a councillor again, following his election. Yes, I would like to record my personal satisfaction that Councillor Pearl was elected in a by-election last week for South Norfolk District Council for Wymondham Central, and we can therefore expect to be recruiting many officers from South Norfolk District Council to this approach. Sorry, I was joking. Councillor Jeffrey.
In terms of agenda item 16, I'd like to propose per the papers.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I was being a bit flippant there. He would not be happy if I didn't do the constitutional amendments. Therefore, I second Councillor Jeffrey's proposal. Any comments? It's all very important, and we need to agree them. Agreed. Thank you very much, and thank you for your.